Adin Ross is getting erased in real time. People are saying $10 million didn't disappear, it got yanked. Not by haters, not by trolls, by the industry. All because he disrespected Doechii and TDE allegedly pulled the switch. Everybody thought they knew the Doechii situation. Adin said something reckless, the internet cooked him, and we were supposed to move on like it was just another streamer meltdown. But then the energy changed. Quiet, cold, because reportedly Top Dawg Entertainment got involved behind the scenes, and that's when this stopped feeling like online drama and started looking like an industry lesson. Not loud, not messy, just doors closing, calls not getting returned, and money getting postponed indefinitely. Now, let me break this down, because people online aren't reacting like this for no reason. The timeline is what makes it feel surgical. First, you got the original clip. Adin doing what Adin does, throwing a comment out like it's just content. The type of line that plays to his fan base because it's edgy, uncomfortable, and it dares you to complain. But this time, folks weren't just mad, they were watching who he aimed it at. Doechii, a black woman with momentum, with a real machine behind her. Then you start seeing the internet go into investigator mode. Not even joking, people were doing frame-by-frame analysis like it's CSI Streamer Edition. They're clipping the exact timestamp, slowing it down, isolating the audio, comparing reactions in the room, and tracking what he said versus what he tried to pretend he meant after. And fans swear the walkback was only because he realized he wasn't beefing with a random trending name. He was allegedly stepping into a protected zone. And it gets even crazier when the names start popping up around the situation, because West Coast voices didn't treat it like a joke. You got people mentioning Glasses Malone checking him. And when that happens, it's not a Twitter argument, that's a cultural warning shot. Then, this is the part that flipped the whole narrative. Wack 100 enters the conversation publicly. Now, love him or hate him, Wack doesn't talk like a fan. He talks like somebody relaying messages. So when he goes on TMZ and starts warning Adin, people heard it as, yo, stop playing. The way Wack said it mattered. Not you're wrong, not you should apologize. More like, stop responding, you're making it worse. And allegedly, TDE handles business. That phrase right there had the internet buzzing because everybody knows what it implies without saying. It's not about arguing, it's about consequences. Now, reportedly, behind the scenes, Adin was panicking, and people are claiming he was calling Wack like, what's going on? Why are people pressing me? Because once those West Coast checks happen, it stops being about one insult. It becomes about what the insult represents. And it becomes about who you thought you could play with for content. Here's where the internet went full conspiracy board mode. They started circulating the claim that Anthony Top Dawg Tiffith, yes, the boss tied to Kendrick Lamar, SZA, and Doechii, allegedly reached out through that same channel. And no, nobody's saying there's a recorded call we can confirm publicly, but the perception online is what matters, because the reaction is consistent with one thing. Adin suddenly stopped looking confident. He started looking managed. Watch the posture shift people keep pointing out. Earlier, he's loud. Later, he's careful. Earlier, he's joking. Later, he's repeating the same safe phrases. Much love, no disrespect. I'm done talking about it. That doesn't feel like growth. That feels like somebody told you the room you're in just changed. And let's keep it real. This is why folks think the industry angle is real, because internet backlash alone usually doesn't erase deals overnight. Twitter drags you, you disappear for 2 days, you come back, you act humbled, you keep streaming. That's the cycle. But the story people are tracking now is a different pattern. First, the insult, then the checks, then the warnings, then the sudden silence, then the business fallout. That's why people are calling it an execution, not because anyone can prove some secret meeting happened, but because the public consequences look like what happens when the machine decides you're not worth the risk. Now, let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking. Adin Ross didn't wake up one day and randomly choose Doechii. This looks like a pattern colliding with a moment. Adin's brand, let's keep it real, has been built on controversy, shock, edginess, toxic fan culture as a feature, not a bug. He thrives in environments where the line is blurry because the blur creates clips, and the clips create money. That's the streamer economy. The mess is the product. But the internet changed. And the change didn't happen because people suddenly got nicer. It happened because sponsors got stricter, platforms got nervous, and advertisers stopped paying premiums to sit next to chaos. So you got creators who used to benefit from being reckless now feeling the walls close in. Because the same thing that got you attention can become the reason brands label you unpredictable. And that kind of fall off hits different when you're used to the money flowing like it's automatic. Meanwhile, look at who Doechii is becoming in real time. People online keep listing it like a scoreboard. Grammys, Billboard Women of the Year, critical respect, cultural respect, and most importantly, a real team. The kind of team where you don't have to scream back when somebody throws dirt. You just keep moving and the system handles the rest. So put that together. You got a streamer whose lane is controversy, feeling the industry it colder toward that type of energy, and you got an artist whose lane is artistry, credibility, and upward motion. And when those two worlds touch, it can create one ugly impulse: humiliate the person you can't outshine. Because think about it, Adin can dominate a room full of streamers, but he can't dominate the Grammy conversation. He can't dominate the culture conversation without borrowing it. So what do? You poke at it, you provoke it, you turn it into content. You try to make the winning person look small because it makes you feel big for 30 seconds. And people are saying that's exactly what happened here. Not comedy, not banter, a flex attempt. Now add one more layer: timing. Every time a black woman starts hitting a new peak, the internet gets weird. The comments get louder, the hate gets more creative, and certain creators know that their audience will reward them for pushing the button, because outrage is engagement, and engagement is money. That's why this story has folks so heated. It looks like someone tried to farm disrespect for profit. And it gets even wilder when you remember Doechii didn't even have to respond, because when you're backed by real industry power, you don't need a clapback, you don't need a thread, you don't need to go live. You just need the right people to decide, nah. That's why people online keep repeating this phrase: protected. Not in a magical way, in a business way. Because the music industry can ignore a lot, but it doesn't ignore threats to assets. And if Doechii is viewed as an asset with long-term upside, then disrespect toward her becomes a risk, a financial risk, a PR risk, a cultural risk, and that's when the machine moves. So no, nobody has to prove some cinematic meeting happened. The motive is enough for the theory to catch fire. Adin wanted a moment. Doechii represents a moment he can't control, and the industry allegedly reminded him some moments aren't his to play with. But here's the part that hits different. Because in the middle of all this content, the person catching the blast isn't a streamer who signed up for chaos. It's an artist who was just working, creating, winning, existing. Doechii didn't ask to be a target. She didn't run a diss campaign. She didn't rally fans to attack him. And that's what makes the whole thing feel so nasty, because one careless clip can turn into an avalanche when millions of followers treat disrespect like it's sport. People online started talking about the harassment wave like it was inevitable. Memes, edits, comments trying to cut deeper than the original insult. And the way the internet works is simple. You can be minding your business, but if a big creator points at you, the crowd moves. Not because they know you, because they know the game. And that's why the silence became its own statement. Because Doechii not responding doesn't read like weakness. It reads like, I'm not even stepping into your world. Like she's standing on a different floor of the building, listening to the noise downstairs and still signing plaques upstairs. That's power people can't stand. Because if she claps back, it becomes a back and forth. It becomes equal. But if she keeps winning while you spiral, then the story turns into something darker. You tried to humble her, and you ended up humbling yourself. And honestly, it's not just about Doechii. It's about what she represents to a lot of people watching. A black woman being celebrated, protected, and elevated without having to perform pain for the audience. No public breakdown, no begging for sympathy, just motion. That's why folks are saying this situation lit a fuse, because the disrespect wasn't random to them. It felt like the same old game. Poke the black woman, see if she bleeds, then monetize the reaction. And this time, reportedly, the culture wasn't in the mood. Now, here's where the story turns from internet outrage into why is the money moving like that? Because allegedly, the real punishment wasn't a comment section, it was contracts. People started clipping Adin's own words from Stream, where he admitted deals were falling apart. And listen, no one has to pretend every deal is public. Creators have private negotiations all the time. But when someone says on camera that 2 multi-million-dollar deals got canceled, the internet hears that like a siren. Then you got the NBA angle. This is the part that made the story feel huge because it's not just music people anymore. People are saying Adin was tied into a collaboration with an NBA superstar and that it got pulled. And the alleged message that fans keep repeating is postponing indefinitely. That phrase is corporate code. It doesn't mean later. It means we can't be seen near you. And it gets even crazier when online detectives start mapping the fallout like a spreadsheet. They're listing brand relationships, appearances, rumored collabs, invites, backstage access, all of it. Then they compare the before version of Adin, confident, loud, deal talk non-stop, to the after version, short answers, quiet tone, defensive energy. Now again, everything is speculation until confirmed, but the perception is consistent. He went from "I'm him" to "I don't want to talk about it." And people are claiming that's because he got a warning that wasn't public. The kind of warning where you realize you're not arguing with a person anymore, you're dealing with a network. Then you got the WAC 100 layer again, because when WAC goes public and says things like "stop responding," that tells the audience there's a behind-the-scenes chain of communication. And when people think TDE is on that chain, the whole story becomes Adin touched the wrong wire. The internet started treating it like an example, like a case study. How does a creator actually get punished in 2026? Not by being banned, not by being shadowed, but by becoming expensive. Because once you're labeled risk, every dollar attached to you needs extra paperwork. Every appearance needs extra PR. Every company wants assurances. And that's why the execution narrative keeps sticking. It's not cinematic, it's accounting. Now, let's talk about the apology arc because fans didn't buy it. Adin suddenly pledging $100,000 to Black-owned businesses after the disrespect hit the timeline, after the backlash, after the reported deal losses. People online didn't see charity. They saw a receipt. And to be fair, donating is donating. But the internet isn't just judging the action, they're judging the timing. Because when you lose millions and then announce a donation, the audience reads it like damage control, like a fire extinguisher, not a moral awakening. And the wildest part is, this isn't even about whether Adin meant what he said, because intent doesn't protect you from impact when your platform is massive. If your words trigger harassment, if your clip becomes a weapon, you don't get to hide behind "I was joking" like that erases the crowd you aimed. So the evidence round 2 isn't just leaked calls or industry whispers. It's the visible collapse pattern that people keep pointing to. Insult, backlash, warnings, silence, then deals postponed indefinitely. That's why folks online are convinced something bigger happened. Not proven, but it looks like it. Now, this whole situation gets even crazier when you zoom out and look at how streamer culture has been moving lately. Because Adin isn't the first creator to learn the hard way that shock content doesn't hit the same when brands are watching. Back in the day, controversy was a cheat code. You'd say something wild, get clipped, trend, and the platforms would reward you because attention is attention. But now, it feels like the moment you become the headline, the people who sign checks start calculating the cost of your name. And that calculation is ruthless. And people online keep comparing this to other fall-off moments. When a creator crosses a cultural line, the internet drags them. But the real change is behind the scenes. Invites stop. Collabs get rescheduled. Teams stop replying. The public sees the silence and thinks, oh, it blew over. But the business side is still updating the risk profile. That's why in this story, even the idea of TDE being involved matters so much. Because TDE isn't known for doing public circus. They're known for moving like a real camp. So when people believe they stepped in, it makes every consequence feel intentional, even if nobody can confirm the exact mechanics. And look at the West Coast factor. People keep saying the West Coast unified, and that sounds dramatic, but culturally, it's a real thing. There's a long memory there, there's a code there, and when outsiders joke on something they don't understand, the response isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just access removed. Now let's keep it real. Adin's audience is global, but the hip-hop industry runs on relationships. You can't buy certain rooms, you get invited. And once you're seen as disrespectful to the wrong people, the invite doesn't come. That's how you get erased without being canceled. No dramatic announcement, just a quiet downgrade. And people swear that's what happened here. Not a ban, not a public blacklist, just a shift where the industry decides you're not worth the headache. So when fans say industry execution, they're not saying somebody physically did anything. They're saying the system allegedly did what systems do: protect assets, remove liabilities, keep the money clean. And this story has way bigger implications than just Adin Ross and Doechii. What we're watching is the internet learning that fame doesn't equal immunity anymore. Not like it used to. For a long time, the unspoken deal was if you can generate enough attention, you can survive almost anything. But now the culture is shifting towards something else: accountability that shows up in contracts, not just comments. And the bigger conversation is about who gets treated as disposable, because disrespecting black women has been normalized online for years, like it's content, like it's jokes, like it's harmless. But the consequences have always landed somewhere real: harassment, safety concerns, mental pressure, career noise that artists didn't ask for. So when people say the culture finally stopped protecting bad behavior, that's the thesis right there. Not that everyone suddenly became moral, but that the audience and the industry started aligning on what's too expensive to tolerate. And it's also a warning for every creator who thinks the internet is a playground with no fences. Because once you grow big enough, you're not just a person with opinions. You're a brand attached to other brands. You're a billboard that companies pay to stand next to. So the more you chase shock, the more you risk becoming radioactive. And the more you rely on controversy to stay relevant, the more likely you are to hit the wrong target one day. Not a random target, a protected target, an asset, a person backed by a real structure. That's why this story feels like a public power shift. Doechii's silence isn't just personal strategy. People see it as the culture saying, you don't have to scream to be heard. You just have to keep winning and let the system do what it does. Now we're at the point where the story splits into two futures, and both of them are ugly for Adin. Future one, this is temporary. He lays low, the internet gets bored, and he slowly rebuilds by staying quiet and playing safer. That's the classic redemption arc. But future two? The one people are whispering about is that the damage is permanent because the industry doesn't forget risk. And you can hear it in how the blame gets passed around. People say he started pointing fingers at media outlets, at commentary pages, at narratives, anything except the original moment. Because it's easier to argue with coverage than it is to admit you miscalculated your target. But the clips exist, the timestamps exist, and that's the problem with streaming. Your worst instinct becomes a permanent file. It doesn't fade, it gets reposted, it gets edited, it gets archived. Meanwhile, Doechii's trajectory keeps rising in the background like a scoreboard you can't turn off. More nominations, bigger stages, more visibility. And people are saying that contrast is the real punishment, not just lost money, but lost positioning. Because if the story becomes Adin tried to clown her and she leveled up, then every time she wins, it replays the lesson. Not with a diss track, with a trophy. So no, none of us can confirm every whispered detail, but the perception online is brutal. This wasn't a beef, it was a public demonstration of who holds power now and who doesn't. So here's the real question. Did Adin Ross destroy his own career chasing a clip, or did the culture finally stop giving creators a free pass to disrespect black women and still cash out? Because if this really is what people are saying it is, an industry execution, then it means the rules changed. And it means the next creator who tries to farm humiliation for content might not get canceled. They might get quietly removed from rooms they can't buy their way back into. And what about Doechii? Did she just prove that silence plus success is the most dangerous weapon of all? No rant, no live stream, no back and forth, just elevation, while the other side loses oxygen. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think TDE allegedly stepped in behind the scenes, or is Adin's collapse just a natural consequence of being reckless in a sponsor-driven era? And be honest, do you think Adin meant it as jokes, or do you think it was straight insecurity watching a woman win in a lane he can't touch?
If you want updates as more clips, reports, and receipts surface, make sure you like the video, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this story isn't over. The Grammys are coming, and if Doechii keeps rising, Adin's gonna have to watch it happen from the sidelines.